to the Lawrence Citizens Academy. This is a program designed to educate the citizens of Lawrence about their local government. Once a month, we have a manager from City Hall come and speak to the citizens to explain what they do and how their department works and how it affects the community. So today, I'm very honored to have Mark Ianello, who is the Chief Financial Officer for the city. So please give him a warm welcome.
Good evening, everyone. As George just mentioned, I'm Mark Ianello. I'm the Chief Administrative and Finance Officer for the City of Lawrence. I've been in City of Lawrence since about 2011. I came October of 2011, so it's been 11 years that I've been here. The reason why I came to Lawrence, just a little background. I was a practicing CPA for 20 years, and I'm born and raised in Springfield. And Springfield had a little trouble with the city of Springfield had trouble with their finances. So I was approached to see if I could help out the city. Being born and raised there, I thought that was a noble thing to do, so I left my practice and helped the city of Springfield during their financial troubles. So I was there for about 7 years or so, and then I got the call Lawrence needed some help. So I evaluated the situation. Although I'm from Western Mass, couldn't see myself really relocating to Lawrence, but in essence, that's what I did 11 years ago, and it's been quite a challenge. The circumstances in Springfield, how they got into financial troubles were exactly the same when I arrived in Lawrence. They had the exact same fact patterns of why they ended up in financial difficulty. So I wasn't surprised when I got here of all the things that I found. They were very something that I had just dealt with in the previous municipality. So anyway, just a brief little background about what I do. The Department of Administration and Finance, of which I'm the chief, I have a bunch of departments that report to me. So I just thought I would just roll over real quickly all the departments that report to me in a brief introduction of what they do. The City Comptroller is part of the A&F division, and the City Comptroller is responsible for keeping the official accounting ledgers for the City of Lawrence. Any financial statements for the City of Lawrence, they're prepared by the Comptroller coming off of their books and records. So it's a very important position. Ramona Sabalos is our City Comptroller. She's a CPA, as I'm a CPA. So it's very great. It's really great to have a couple of CPAs in the City of Lawrence. It's really helpful. So besides just keeping the book, she's also primarily responsible for budgetary control, meaning in her setup of accounts, that's how all the departments have budgetary accounts, and that's how they spend their budget, and we make sure that they can't overspend their budget. And I'll get to overspending budgets in a bit. About one of the problems that the City of Lawrence had. We did overspend our budgets, and that's why we had some financial difficulties. One of the other departments that reports, a very important department, is Treasurer Collector. The Treasury side of the operation manages all the city's cash and investments, and the collector side of the operation sends out tax bills and collects taxes from everyone. Very important function, and it's had a lot of changes to that department over the years for the better. It's much more. It's a much improved operation since I've been here. And Perla Ortiz is the current city treasurer collector, and she's been really fantastic. The next department is the assessor's office. The assessor's office reports to A&F, and the assessor's office is charged with maintaining or determining what the fair property values are across the city. Very important. Property values are how the property taxes are levied. So the assessors are an integral part of your tax bill. Whether you're renting or whether you own property, taxes are a big deal here in Lawrence. We collect about $70+ million in real estate taxes, real and personal property. And in the assessor's office, there's 3 assessors. Alexi Vega is the chief assessor, and they handle all that valuation of tax, make sure all the taxes and properties are fairly valued. Next is the personnel department, or human resources. Gina LaGreca is our personnel director. She's an attorney and is very well versed in helping us with a lot of our collective bargaining, because that's one of the major things the personnel office does, is hire employees, manage employees, and help with the collective bargaining process. We have several unions on the city side of things. Let's see, the next department is a payroll department. Payroll department's a new department. I created that department when I got here because that was one of the primary issues, and one of the primary issues in Springfield was payroll was not handled quite properly. We had a lot of problems with payroll tax returns and things like that. So we found the same problem here in Lawrence when I arrived, and so I knew the value of creating a payroll department and having a payroll director immediately responsible for everyone's payroll. And that's been really great. So Donna Cole is our payroll director. She's a really seasoned professional, and it's been really great to have her on board. It's made my job a lot easier when she came on board. The next department is the purchasing department. Purchasing department reports to the A&F. That's Genovi Martinez is our purchasing agent. And basically what the purchasing department does is make sure all the city departments procure or buy things in accordance with the public bidding laws and the public finance laws. So that's making sure we procure, follow all the procurement laws that the Commonwealth of Mass has. That's their general responsibility. And last but not least is the Information Technology Department. Carlos Castillo is back here. He's also part of the A&F. And obviously, information technology is in charge of all the computers, phones, all the technology that the city may have that runs through the IT department. And Carlos manages that function. So that's probably our most important function in the city, because without computers and cell phones and desk phones, we wouldn't be able to operate. So that's just a brief introduction of what is the Department of Administration of Finance. Those are the departments that report directly to me, and they do a fantastic job. The next thing I just wanted to cover briefly was, which I mentioned, is how come the city has a chief administrative and finance officer? That was we're required to have a CAFO for short. We're required to have a chief administrative and finance officer because in part of the bailout legislation for Lawrence in 2010, Chapter 58 of the Acts of 2010 was allowed Lawrence to borrow up to $35 million to handle all the deficits that it had in 2010, and so the state created some special legislation to allow Lawrence to bail itself out and borrow temporarily for basically overspending their budgets over those years. And in April of 2010, they appointed a fiscal overseer for the city of Lawrence. It has the broad financial powers, designed to strengthen all the financial controls for the city. So that was generally the job of the fiscal overseer. When the fiscal overseer was satisfied that the city was kind of on the correct route, he made a recommendation to the Secretary of A&F at the state to eliminate the fiscal overseer. But in that special legislation, or that special statute bailing out Lawrence, Chapter 58, included a provision that if the city is able to return back to local control, that the city would have to create a CAFO position, or a Chief Administrative and Finance Officer. And the duties of the fiscal overseer generally were transferred to me as the first Chief Administrative and Finance Officer for the city. I was appointed by the Secretary of A&F, or appointed by the mayor, but chosen by the Secretary of A&F 3 names were submitted to the Secretariat. He provided those names to Mayor Rivera in 2019. I was one of those names, and Mayor Rivera appointed me to CAFO since I was previously the Chief Financial Officer. So that's how I came to be, how the position came to be. And again, the CAFO powers generally are the same as the fiscal overseer. I'm in charge of implementing, accounting systems. We have an ERP system, an enterprise resource management solution that we use on all departments use on a day-to-day basis. And that system is responsibility of the CAFO. Also supervise all the data processing for the city, which is all the computer stuff that we have, all the computer programs. That's also comes under the responsibility of the CAFO, because that's really how the city operates. If we're not using our financial software properly, we have financial software that controls spending, for example, but we weren't using it properly, so departments were allowed to overspend their accounts, and that's why we had needed special legislation back in 2010 to correct it. So we've part of those responsibilities are part of my function to make sure that the city stays in the up and up. Also, uniform budget guidelines for all departments. CAFO's in charge of, determining, how do all departments submit their budgets to the mayor. Comes to me first, basically, and then we present it to the mayor. And then one of the other things that is primary responsibility is coming up with a 5-year forecast and a 5-year capital plan for the city. So that's something I do as well. So that's just very, very brief, what the CAFO does, what the departments do. And I just wanted to just briefly touch upon some of the highlights of the city of Lawrence, and since 2010 to now, how have we done? We borrowed $27.4 million in 2010 to pay bills that the city had in 2010, and we've been paying those deficit notes back over a 20-year period. So we have approximately $11.7 million remaining, and that'll be paid off in another 7 or 8 years. And free cash is a weird little term. It's unique to Massachusetts. You won't find it in any accounting literature. There's no such thing as free cash. As a CPA, it's kind of a weird concept to me. But basically what it is in the state of Massachusetts, free cash is determined by the Department of Revenue for each community, and it allows you, and it's an amount that they certify that says, here's some excess funds that you have, and you can use that to help with your, help the city do something and use it for whatever the city would like. And in the 2000s, the city was in a lot of financial, under a lot of financial stress, and early 2000. The city had roughly $11 million in free cash, and then it slowly dwindled. And in 2006 and 7, it was the negative $16 million. And then, like I said, in 2008 and 9, it didn't even certify free cash. So in 2010, the overseer came in, and we started to make changes to the financial structure and how the operating budget is created. And we had free cash of roughly $5 million. And today, our free cash over the multiple years, it's increased to $16.5 million. So the city's shown quite a bit of a turnaround as far as their available funds or free cash is. One of the other things we have is we've been able to balance our budgets over the last 10 years or so, and we haven't haven't taxed the residents to the full amount that we're allowed. Most of us have heard of what's called Proposition 2.5. It passed in the early 80s, and it said that real estate bills can only go up 2.5% more than the previous year. And in many of those years, in the last 10 years, we didn't go up that full 2.5%. So we have what's called an excess tax levy capacity, which is kind of like having money in the bank as well. And right now, our excess tax levy capacity is at $10.7 million. So that's available to the city at some point if it ever got into financial trouble, but at least it has an excess tax levy capacity to help with any emergencies that the city may have in the future. And one of the things I'm most proud of is getting the credit rating increases. Most of you probably may or may not have heard of Moody's and S&P. They rank anytime somebody tries to sell bonds or borrow money, these rating agencies look at your financial structure and they rate the city of Lawrence. And in the city of Lawrence, we've had several upgrades to our bond rating, which helps the city borrow at a lower rate. So we've had several updates. Back in 2012, S&P had a BBB minus rating, and now we're at an A plus rating, which we received in 2022. That was our last upgrade. May of 19 of 2022 was our last upgrade from S&P, and we're very proud of that. That is a big accomplishment for the city of Lawrence, getting out of the Bs and into the As. One of the reasons why we had such financial trouble was, we collect $70 million or so in property taxes. We were not doing a good job collecting our taxes, and the taxes are how we pay for the operating budget, how the cops and firemen get paid. It's a major portion of one of the major portions of our budget. And we didn't do a good job sending out the tax bills and then collecting it. So one of the first things the overseer did was make sure that the treasurer's office was filing, sending out the tax bills, making sure they're going through what's called a tax lien process. And it's a way, if people don't pay their taxes, the municipalities can lien their properties at some point so that they come in and pay those taxes. So we did a really good job collecting our back taxes, and that's really helped with collecting those back taxes really helped with our free cash increases and our operating budget. We also properly managed our budget. As I mentioned earlier, some of the problems that the city had was we didn't have good systems in place to make sure when the city mayor and the city council approved a budget for somebody that they stayed within that budget. One of the other things that was happening was using when you're preparing budget projections or creating a budget for fiscal year 23, for example, we have to estimate how much we think our taxes are going to collect, how much we're going to receive in licenses and permits, and many other revenue sources for the city. And the city had a practice of overestimating their ability to collect revenue. And what happens is if you build a budget based on overestimating your revenues, you're going to spend more than you actually take in. And that's really what happened in the city of Lawrence. So we've been pretty responsible with coming up with our budget projections, and we're not we're conservative, trying to be as conservative as possible without being overly conservative. But that's one of the reasons why the city has turned around, mainly because of those changing the budget practices. Also having a 5-year forecast so people can see, based on this year's budget, what is it like in 5 years? What will the financial numbers look like? So that's important to have those financial forecasts in place. We also put together some financial policies that we also had in place that were not before, such as having a certain percentage of our assets reserved in an account, savings account, if you will. And the other, one of the major accomplishments also was bringing the school department had a separate accounting and payroll system, and having them part of, having all the city into one accounting and payroll system was really a massive change to the city, and really helped manage the city's operations. So let's see, I've spoken for about 20 minutes, and I know it's a lot of detail, it's interesting to me because I'm a finance person, but I imagine it may not be as interesting as the rest of you. So I'm a wealth of information about municipal government. So if there's any questions, I think I'd like to hear any questions you may have, and maybe perhaps I can answer them. So anyone? Sure.
On your last point on the school department, so the school department is part of your oversee as well?
Yeah, generally, yes. All of the city departments' budgets are reported to me first, and then they go to the mayor. But the school department does have a particular part of the bailout legislation was also applicable to the school department, where they actually had a receiver for about 5 years, and then now they're under the auspices of a Lawrence, an LEE board, Lawrence Alliance for Education Board, which is appointed by the receiver or by the state Department of Education, and they kind of control the operations of the school department. But one of the things that the school department does, all of their operations, the treasurer handles all the checks for distributing all checks for the city of Lawrence, including the school department. So they're part of the general government of the city of Lawrence, just another department like the DPW.
Okay, so like the IT department is also the IT department for the schools?
Well, the school has their own IT department, but they work very closely with our IT department. So it's all integrated as far as the accounting and the our enterprise resource planning solution is a product called Tyler, and everybody uses this Tyler system to keep track of their budgets, collect receipts, do their keep track of grants. All the stuff that the city does is maintained in this using this ERP system.
So on behalf of this young lady,
Sure.
if I'm translating correctly, at some point you had to make some tighten up when you came in.
Yes.
And the sort of dire straits coming out of the recession and all that. I don't know if I heard correctly or she did, you did have to tighten up in various areas. She wants to know where are the budget, who's mostly directly impacted, or what services are mostly directly impacted when that happened?
When I arrived in 2011, the overseer was here for about a year, and he started changing the budget practices for the city, trying to make sure, as I mentioned, we didn't overestimate our revenues and create a budget that we really can't afford to pay for. So that was the practice of the city, not having good projections, and I think the overseer used some of the Department of Revenue staff to help him put together that first budget. So it was fairly presented and had numbers that were reliable or fairly conservative. And some of the other things, again, as I mentioned, the overseer saw what the back taxes owed to the city were, and he immediately ordered the treasurer to, let's get on the tax leaning process and collect those back taxes. So that was a major effort, collecting those back taxes, changing the way the city prepares its operating budget so that it is more fair and reasonable, and so there's a bunch of things. Implementing, when I arrived, we implemented this, even though we had this ERP system in the city, wasn't used by very many users, and we didn't use all the controls that you're allowed to use within that system. So when I arrived, the first thing we took a look at was the ERP system. We put in the controls. We required more. There's hundreds of users using it today. I think there was only about 6 or 7 people using the system when I arrived. Now there's hundreds of people across the city and school department using it.
That system being standing for, or?
Yeah, it's a ERP system. It's a computer system that to help everybody manage their budgets. We collect taxes through it. It's a grant accounting system. It's all of those things in one. And that's one of the, we have over a $300 million budget. There's a lot of, we need a really good system to keep track of that. The city of Lawrence is a big operation. We only collect about 70 million or 72 million or so in real and personal property taxes. We get a couple $100 million in state aid, and there's a bunch of other receipts that we receive. So it's a $300+ million operation, and so it's quite sophisticated. And having the knowledge and the expertise, which we now have with the department heads, as I just mentioned, to make sure the city operates a little more smoothly. We're not overspending our budgets. We're collecting the amounts that are due from us. When somebody doesn't pay a bill, we send you a reminder. And we also Several years ago, we did hire a law firm to go after to make sure we could file those tax liens for delinquent taxpayers. Many people, don't pay their taxes because they don't have to. We charge interest at 14 and 16% if you don't pay, but for some people, it's easier to not pay their tax bill than go borrow from a bank. So, which is what they should do, and kind of pay their taxes. But we can't keep police and firemen on the street if people don't pay their tax bills, if we don't get our aid from the state. All that is how we operate. So the school department wouldn't be able to operate without state aid. And also the property taxes fund, we about 10 or 11 million dollars or so of our operating budget goes to the school department on top of the state aid that they receive. So it's very important that we collect and have an efficient operation. Anyone else? Sure.
I'm reluctant only because this is a personal thing for me. Streetlights.
Yep.
All the streetlights owned by the city?
They are now. Just a year or two ago, we purchased the street lights for like $1 from National Grid, converted them to LED, and all the street lights are just about all. There should be all are now under the control of the city of Lawrence, and are owned by the city of Lawrence.
Okay, so for the electricity to run those,
Yep.
do you pay by the street light, or is there a?
No, they're not metered, so there's a formula, and what that is, some electrical engineer must have come up with it from National Grid, but basically our electricity bill for street lighting was a couple $1 million, and then after we switched them all out to LED, which uses a fraction of the power, instead of a couple $1 million, it'd be more like less than $1 million.
The reason why I asked.
And they're brighter as well.
I got a street light on my street, not far from my house, that was replaced. The pole was replaced over a year ago, but the street light still hasn't been turned back on.
Us too.
You should, the DPW has I think on the website, you'll find a thing to report potholes and streetlights are out, because, unless they know that a streetlight is out, they don't know enough to send somebody to repair it. So we do rely.
It doesn't need repairing, it just needs to be turned on.
Yeah, well, they all should be on at night. So if they're not on, you should, make a phone call or send an email to DPW, and they'll, get it fixed or turn it on. If it's not on, it's probably because something's broken.
No, they replaced the pole, and the person who replaced it didn't have the authorization to turn it on. That's what they told me.
Yeah, okay, that sounds a little weird to me, but anyway, DPW can follow up on it, because if there's a number on all the poles, so there's a way to identify it, but just give the approximate street location, somebody will go out there and check it out, find out that it's now lit and get it turned on.
All right.
Same thing with, like I mentioned with potholes, that's a big deal. We don't have people going around driving the streets every day to find a pothole. We rely on the residents to inform us, hey, there's a pothole on such and such a street, and then they can fix it. All right, anybody else? Yeah, sure.
Ok, debido a todo lo que usted ha explicado, la organización de un nuevo sistema y de la recolección que han tenido y que ahora tienen más presupuesto para la ciudad,
due to what you had covered earlier and the fact that the city has collected quite a bit of money,
la ciudad está teniendo, según yo escuché a nuestro alcalde hace poco, necesidades de más policías para nuestra ciudad.
so my understanding that what I've heard from the mayor is that the city in fact needs more police officers.
Según lo que escuché, pues esto es debido a que otras ciudades están haciendo un mejor pago para ellos. ¿Qué han ustedes hecho en este último tiempo para poder solucionar y que nuestra ciudad tengamos más policía en nuestras calles?
So this is based on the fact that other cities are doing more to take care of their police officers. So what are we doing here to take care of our police officers?
Well, I can tell you since I've been here, we've hired more police officers. The police department never seems to have enough, but we have added police and firefighters since I've been here. One of the things that happened back in 2010 when Mayor Lantigua was a new mayor in the city, and when he arrived, they couldn't pay their bills. So he had to ask the state for some help. The state passed this special legislation, but one of the things that had to happen was there were a lot of police and fire officers laid off that year because we couldn't afford them. We had to balance their budget. That was one of the first things the overseer did, the fiscal overseer, and we've hired those police and firefighters back, and we've increased their staff. We've opened up a fire station that was closed, so we've done the best we can to increase the presence out in the street. The police chief and the fire chief would still like to see more officers hired, and that's it'd be great to hire more officers, but how do we pay for them? Well, if there's, our budget is finite. We have our property taxes can only go up 2.5% more than the previous year. We do have some excess tax levy capacity, but the mayors have been are obviously responsible to the taxpayers, and when they increase taxes to the residents, that's not a good thing for a mayor. So it's a balancing act for the elected officials to increase taxes and provide pay for what everybody needs. And sure, they'd love to have more sidewalks, more streets paved, but that requires money, and that would be a tax increase to the residents. So it's a balance. Sure.
Is there an accounting of by way of public records or whatever that citizens can see? Is the free cash just put in a fund, like an emergency, or why not 16 million for police and firefighters, or how does that?
Well, that's a good question, because that's one of the things I think that happened over the years. Free cash is something, it's like one-time money that you have, and it's kind of your savings account. But if I spent 16 million and hired more police and firefighters, I don't have 16 million for the following year, so I just have to lay them off.
How about 1 million?
Yeah, well, and that's what this particular budget that we passed, we are using some of our free cash to subsidize the debt service on as everyone knows, or many of you know, the Oliver School. We're building 2 new schools, the Oliver and the Leahy School. There was a override vote, a debt override vote that went to the taxpayers, and it was defeated. The taxpayers said, no, we don't want to pay extra for this school, and so that was defeated. Thankfully, however, there was some ARPA money available. The feds came out with some funds for the city. We were able to still build that Oliver School using city resources. And one of the way we're going to do that is with some of this free cash or this reserves that we have. We're going to be using those reserves to subsidize the debt service for the Oliver and the Leahy School and the new police station. Those are 3 projects done in the last couple of years, or approved in the last couple of years. And we're going to be able to do that without a debt override. Every other city in the Commonwealth practically may be building a new school, but they're getting an override on their Prop 2.5. They're going up Prop 2.5 plus whatever the cost of the bond is to pay for that new school. So it's extraordinary for the city of Lawrence to pay for 2 schools without a tax increase. But that's basically how one of the allowable uses, if you will, from a financial standpoint. And my recommendation to the city is use that free cash for things that are one-time, or things that something that is not a continuing operation. Because I have the free cash this year, but I don't have it every other year. So if you put it into your operating budget, you'll be a couple of years from now, you'll be having a deficit situation, and the state will have to come and bail us out. So we don't use free cash for payroll. If that answers your question.
It does. some concern, because those are the essentials, and I used the wrong word to an extent when I said tighten up in my earlier question. Really, I should have better said cuts, like what specific cuts? That was back then, but now, it's just interesting to find out that what we learned in the pandemic are known as essential services are the first sometimes to suffer, or at least that's the perception. In the spirit of her question, I feel terrorized just going to work frequently. And I was just at the police station last night actually saying, what's going on? Our city's being ruled by motorbikes, but we just can't seem to put our heads together budgetarily or by way of, I don't know,
Well, it's all mayors would like to hire more police and firemen, and and when we do the budget every year, if we can squeeze a couple more in, we try and do that. That's one of the things we do when we're, one of the priorities for the mayor is public safety. So anything we can do to increase the police and fire budget it has the mayor's support. But again, you have to pay for it. And I don't just have to pay for it this year, I got to pay for it for every year. So
Sure.
hiring additional employees, you've got to make sure the finances make sense so you don't put yourself or put the city in a deficit situation a couple of years down the road. So again, I've been here for 11 years. We've been doing things pretty well. We've had surpluses every year. We haven't had any deficits. And my legacy to the city is hopefully we've got that system in place that will continue that way long after I'm gone. Anyone else have anything? Well, thank you for attending. I appreciate it. It's great to see residents have an interest in the stuff that I do, which is kind of boring. But it's very important to the city of Lawrence, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.